Moved it.
I see that.
Yeah, they're messing with us.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Capital Improvement Program Committee to order. It is March 5th, and it is 7:04 p.m. Members present are Christine Malos, Stu Cobb, Steph Summers, Jen McCoo, myself, James Marshall, Donald Gingics, Jeremy Brothers, Pete Bacon, and Peter Tanaka. I don't see Melissa online. So Melissa McKinnon is absent tonight. First up on the agenda is present to speak. If you'd like to say something, please identify yourself for the record and have at it. We'll start in the room, Alex. Anybody online? There'll be another chance at the end. Going once, going twice. All right, moving on. Next up is approval of minutes. We have 3 of them in your packet because we haven't been able to vote in the past couple of meetings. First up is February 5th.
So moved.
Anybody's?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Let's take a vote.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous. Next up. Minutes for February 12th,
So moved.
2025. Seconded by Peter. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody? Aye. Anybody opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, unanimous. And last up is our last meeting, February 19th.
So moved.
Second. Seconded by Peter. Any discussion?
Wasn't at that one, so you abstained for that reason.
They're all in, right, so we don't need to call, right? The hybrid meeting require a roll call in and of itself, and even if there's nobody online?
No,
What?
if there's nobody online from the committee, we don't need a roll call, correct?
No, it's
Let's just do one
a
anyway.
roll call. My understanding is it's a roll call if you're in a hybrid and you
Oh.
don't have unanimous.
All right, I'm saying we'll do a roll call on this one, Christina,
Yes.
Stu. Yeah. Steph,
Abstain.
Jen, I'm a yes. Yes. Sorry. No, that's fine. Peter?
Yes.
Peter. All right. 8 ayes, 1 abstention.
Just Lisa, phenomenal job on these minutes. Like,
Yeah.
it's like I was there, even though I was there. Like I.
You were there even more so,
Yeah.
right? That's how I feel when I read them.
All right.
Enhanced reality.
Yes, wonderful job.
Yes.
All right, that's all the minutes we have. Wonderful. So we're all caught up. Next up is chair report, just briefly, just to give you an update. We met Pete, Christina, Donna and I met briefly on Friday just to go over where the plan was at. And had a discussion which will inevitably reiterate and repeat in full tonight. Because that's the way this works. And then we received fund balances, which you should have received as a part of that packet. As of, those were accurate as of the meeting on the 19th. That's the information I used. I have not updated them yet because quite frankly, it's a tedious process. Capturing any of the changes and what funds projects are being paid from or captured by, and what year they're in. So it will be updated again, but it gives you a rough summary of where they're at as where they were at as submitted. And beyond that, the only thing to do as we start our plan is, as we start discussions on this plan today is, this is the committee's plan. So, and anything in it has to be funded. So we need to take a critical look at everything here. And do our best to present a plan, that accommodates the needs of the project we feel are valid. And it'll be fun. So that's it for this week.
Are
Yes,
you thinking, what, as we go through this, then you're gonna kind of relay what you and Pete and Christine have already discussed? That's pertinent,
it was more broad picture as to where,
Right.
so I'll give you, I'll introduce the
okay.
discussion before we go
So
line
can
by
you
line.
orient me to this?
That's
That's new, right?
basically, yeah, that's the same thing you saw on the 19th. It's a 5 and 10 year summary, essentially. So that's the totals for 5 year and projected things, projected items that you know are likely coming. To the greatest extent we can at this point as a planning board.
I'd like to make a suggestion that we put that 5 and 10 year planning off until the next meeting, because I gotta have this year's planning for tomorrow night.
Understood. That said, it's a comprehensive picture, Pete, so we're not.
Yes, no,
Gosh.
like I said, I understand that. But like I said before, I gotta give them something tomorrow.
Well, you gotta have something for discussion tomorrow, and we'll see how far we get.
Yeah.
The goal tonight really is just to get to the point where we have something that is more aligned than as submitted. With where we feel this needs to go. So that we can have an open discussion with the Board of Finance tomorrow. We're not before the Board of Finance till later in the month, so we have another meeting or two after this to further refine. The reality is any changes we make tonight are gonna take a day to probably integrate into the plan and make sure that our math is right. Or more. Pete, I did promise you, I'll try to get you something. Some reasonable update by 11 AM, but you have
Yes.
a snapshot from Monday at worst case
Yes.
scenario. So moving on, outreach and communications. I sent you guys some follow-up on a number of items. The first was Board of Ed. Reached out to Phil about the ramp that was in the plan, but was not renewed. He recommended to pull that because they are working towards saving towards a larger comprehensive capital project. So that $95,000 hole that was submitted last year. I think I crossed it out on the version I have, you got in front of you. I didn't make any changes to this beyond fund balances from that April 19th, and the library requested for another item that I went back and forth with. I had some follow-up with the director of the library, just clarification on their requests and the timing. Their 5-year plan started last year, on their summary. It's been updated and you have that in front of you. What he relayed was that the 22,000 plus for gutters, areaway door repair that was slated for year 1 is really just the continuation of their prior 80,000 approval from last year that hasn't been enacted. So that scope was duplicate, so we pulled the new request for 22,000. And then they slid everything up a year, so the envelope repairs for windows, doors, their request, line 50s. I think it's line 57.
57.
Thank you. In year 2 for the $66,000, that was moved up to year 1. And everything moved forward as well along with it, so.
I'm sorry, which one did you say you pulled out?
Their originally submitted year 1 was like $20,000 for gutters entryway, that's covered, that was a duplicate.
Okay.
Item from that 80,000 we approved last year, so they're gonna cover it under that $80,000, they're working to get it done before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
That's the direction we got. They've had further conversations with the town engineer. But what you have on your plan is up to date as the library is going to have for us at this moment in time. You all had a supplemental email, I don't know whether you got it today, speaking with Troy from Public Works about.
Have it, because,
Oh, yeah, it's in
Yeah,
your,
Lisa,
sorry, you may not have seen it yet, but it's in your packet. Thank you, Lisa. There was a prior approval, I think in 2022, for 35,000 for the Schofield Road planning and engineering. There's 33,500 left in it. That is in talking with Troy today, he said we should close that balance out that $35,000, to balance up to $35,000 because it is the duplicate of the $500,000 request for planning and engineering of the Schofield Road drainage to make that shovel-ready project. So that balance will go back or be available in LoCIP for future spending. And then we can adjust, we can see where that scope railroad engineering goes based on our discussion tonight. And then last but not least, Alex, the driveway aprons.
So as long as so we met last night, as long as the projects are going back to Fund 17, the department is comfortable with them being closed out.
Meaning, yeah, that's the Fund 17, so. Let me take a step back because I'm moving fast. There is the line 25 in your plan with $30,000 from Fund 17 for driveway apron repair at Station 13. We looked into and asked Alex whether or not there was any version of that project that's going to go ahead. And the consensus.
The department's decision last night at the meeting was as long as they're going back into Fund 17, they're okay. Being closed out. And future projects are gonna go through the building committee, so.
So the apron repair project will ultimately be a part of whatever decision is made on that Station 13, so that can be that Fund 17 balance, well, $30,000.
Yes,
For driver apron repair, and is that applicable to the station addition and engineering project too, Alex?
Yes.
That one here, the line 22,
Yes.
the $80,000 from Fund 17, which is about
76.
75, 760.
75, 760, so those, that 100 and change.
And it doesn't need to go back to Fund 17,
It just stays there. Yeah, it's already in Fund 17, we're just not holding it as a potential expense essentially. So the balance should. So the available balance will be inaccurate on this, because it anticipates that. It's a whole lot.
Right, it anticipates that being spent.
Thank you, Alex, for the follow-up.
that, for clarity, that doesn't affect the local balance line because it's
Fund
Fund
17, it affects the Fund 17 balance and.
And
What that.
so there's about 4,000. No, more than that. Between the 80,000 on the line and the 75,000 over here, that's about $4,250. Where's the difference
That's
there?
been spent.
All right, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Hold when everything happens.
Yep. Never mind.
Yes. And unless I'm missing anything in your packet, I think those were the 4 pieces of information. We tried to track down, I have not heard anything further related to Wellington Hills. Surveying design and engineering projects, so they remain as is. And,
Jim, I can speak to Wellington Hill if you like.
sure, Mike, go ahead, thank you.
Mike McCoo, Wellington Hill Fire Department. At the meeting of the fire department last week, the membership authorized the chief and the president to potentially revise the requests or in other words, to work with the facilities building committee and all the other various affected town committees, etc., to rework the request. So basically giving them permission to, I don't know, renegotiate or whatever. And so I believe that the chief and the president are planning to bring it up at the next facilities committee meeting.
Okay. Excellent, thank you, Mike, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's all I have, by way of outreach. Unless Christina, you have got anything separately?
No,
All right. So moving on, old business,
I think I'm reading 2 things to write down.
CIP plan development and discussion. So what you have in front of you is, like I said, updated. I crossed out the ramp project. What I've done is captured, just for our discussion here, is some preliminary items, which again is part of your question here, Steph, about 10-year needs, et cetera. Because we don't have anything submitted, just as a point of reference, there are 3 potential school bond projects that are based on, the HVAC roof, HVAC roof and,
Windows?
whatever the other one was.
Solar
That-
panels?
No, it's whatever they had priced for their.
Ventilation?
Yeah, it's the ventilation, basically HVAC upgrades. Have roughly a $17 million project, so you'll see that would be a year 1 bond payment. I carried it in
Where
the
was
prior,
that?
the prior approved column, I stuck them there in red. The
Oh.
first column there,
Oh, okay.
sorry, row, G, column G.
Column G, row 9.
Thanks.
The second one is the cost that they have for the new school construction and the relative, year 1 bond payment. And then the other one is the renovated new, oh no, the other one is the capital improvement. The isolated repairs projects over time,
Mhm.
spread out over 5 years at the $58 million. And you see the corresponding lease payment of 5.3 there, or a bond payment of 5.3. 5.4. Hey,
So
when we're up that high.
I don't want to be too pointed in the nomenclature, but it's not prior approved, it's prior considered for the red.
So, yes, in this case, again, this isn't going anywhere, Pete. This will be either removed for our discussion today or whatever the case may be. I put them there so that they were just readily available.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
And so that they don't show up in the totals, moving down the line. Similar thing, if you go down to the, rows 29 through 32 for EMS. I captured values for the 4 other pieces of equipment that are well past their 20-year lifespans. That are not active requests, but we know they're inevitably coming. It's 2 engine tanks, forestry and tank 149. So you'll see the corresponding, what a 7-year lease payment would be there. And again, in the total column, on the 5 and 10-year plan, you'll see the total cost of the town for that lease versus the initial payment. Versus the initial costs. The only other items were public works. I showed 3 dump replacements on Troy's 10-year cycle. Those 3 will come up in years 30, 32, and 33. So I carried the 300,000 that we have captured in the plan for the current most recent replacement. But again, you'll see that corresponding.
I got a question for Mike McCool. Mike, you there? Maybe. Mike McCool?
Sorry, the home phone was ringing, which doesn't happen much. That doesn't happen much anymore. What do you
No,
need?
it doesn't.
Sorry, what were you asking?
Just out of curiosity, forestry 149, was that a grant originally?
Yes,
Because
that
it's a
was,
very specialized piece of equipment?
yes, that was purchased with a FEMA grant.
Oh, is there any chance of getting another FEMA grant to replace it?
There are always chances, but typically, and if Stuart's in the room, I don't know if he is, but he can speak more coherently on the FEMA grants, but typically the guidance and the various sort of priorities the FEMA grants have identified have not been in Wellington's favor, and it's incredibly competitive.
Well, I'm guessing forestry equipment's getting a big boost after California.
So the argument when we applied for the grant the last time was in, I don't know if you remember the truck or not, it was like a 1968 Jeep, military Jeep, like Vietnam era, with a canvas roof on it and gas tank behind the driver's seat. That broke down either coming and going to about 50% of the calls that it went on. It had already been repowered once.
What he's trying to say was it was a really, really cool truck.
It was.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah, but it's time had come, so that was our argument towards getting a new forestry bed. To the new truck doesn't, those same arguments don't apply. It's much safer, much more well-built, and this is a matter of finding somebody to work on it and keeping it in service over time. So the likelihood of getting a grant, Bolton was able to get a grant for one, for $125,000, I think is their limit on brush trucks. Which isn't a lot these days, that'll be like a F-350 with a pump in the back, kind of thing.
Is that a request currently?
Yep,
It's a
Right,
long-term, it's a
that's why-
long-term consideration for.
thank you. I was just
funding.
wondering about specialty equipment and whether that was.
It's one of those trucks that isn't used often, depending on the year.
Yeah.
Some years you only have one
This,
call.
this year it went out.
And
a fair
some
amount.
years, you know, it was imperative at that Jeremy Park Road call, it was the only truck that would fit around to the back of the house to get to where the fire is.
Mhm.
There's no replacement for it in terms of function on the fire ground, you can't take an
Right,
engine tank and go off-roading with it.
no,
We can try.
Yeah, well, yeah, for $1.2 million replacement cost and try going off-roading.
yeah,
So it's a specialized truck, but there's no substitute for it, so, assuming we're still gonna have
Right.
woods in Wellington for quite a while, we kind of.
no, I see the need for a replacement. I was just wondering if, you know, there was. More grants because of specialty in this.
And it,
Is that a sentence?
yeah, and then, disregarding the current state of political affairs and federal, agencies being alive or not. One thing they've done in the last 10 to 15 years is they've taken money out of the equipment fund and put it into supplementing payroll for departments that need to have additional paid people on. To the tunes of, tens if not hundreds of millions of dollars they shifted buying stuff to buying people.
Got it.
So that's made it harder to get money for something like that.
So that's it for, I already talked to you about the library. The only other change through discussion that you'll see in here from what you saw on the 19th are lines 3 and 4, the annual transfers. We had previously showed what we had captured last year for year 2. For the transfer to town projects of 1,056,000 and change. I put that down to 800,000 and I dropped the cap reserve for schools to $1 million prior to what it was before we thought we were doing bonds last year. That was part of the result of the discussion that we had on Friday to look at the total capital expenditure for this year versus last year. And then you'll see the total, so that's reflected up top in lines 3 and 4 across all 5 years. I held the rest of the local fund lines from last year's plan for transfer in line 3 for town projects, so it increases by 10% each year. And then,
Can you say that last thing one more time?
sorry, the other values, your 2 through 5 for line 3.
Yep,
Those increase 10% each year, as per our prior plan last year, our approved plan last year.
they decreased from this year.
The 800,000. We had raised that originally to $1 million to make up for the fact that we increased the school transfer last year.
Mhm.
And had very little transfer to town projects, we didn't do anything last year from a capital project perspective, really.
The only thing I'd say is that because we went to 135 last year. And it was supposed to be 5 million across the board for 5 years. That 0.375 should probably be taken off to the 1 million this year on schools. To the level set for the 5 years. That,
One point,
So- so if you plan 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, then you go 1.375, 1, 1, 1, 1, then you end up 0.375 ahead at the end of 5 years. So because there was more than $1 million in last year's budget, that amount should come off this year's budget, so it level sets to $1 million across the board for 5 years.
so I have 2 quick comments to that, one being, I don't personally particularly care where the fund balance divvies up in any great degree, as long as we're increasing capital spending this year from my personal need, because that's what we need to do to tackle any of these projects. Secondly, I'd everybody look at my row column AD, the 5-year totals. We don't have any school spending. We do have school saving on the plan, but the 5-year total, because of that 1 million per year, is only $5 million for the schools. The total line, levels or is under the total 5-year spending for the fire departments, and based on the submitted projects of 4.479 and 2.295 combined. It's also less than Public Works 5-year spending of 5.628. And school is potentially the biggest project. Yes, Pete?
That is $5 million for a 5-year projected total, but that's for the 5 years with year one starting now.
Correct.
Year one for the 5 million that we were looking at started 2 years ago.
It would be 6.375.
Yeah, it would be
5 years.
No, that's not the
7
balance,
point-
that's spending this year, Pete. That's 5-year spending.
5-year spending from this year on through,
Correct.
but we were gonna add $1 million a year for 5 years,
I
and there's
agree.
already 2 years that have gone by. So you add these 5 plus the 2.375, and now you're at 7.32.
Well, I was spending on the other two projects, on the other two departments too.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say that they're more or less level, and quite frankly, that 1.375 doesn't even get them up to the total spending of the other departments. Or that additional, don't worry about it, Alex, I don't use it. Okay. So I just asked you to consider it, because again, it's really the total spending and leveling that total spending or increasing that gradually that that matter to me. Beyond that, everything in yellow on the plan, I think needs discussion, because they were just first steps. And the few items in red are just the big new capital bond spending, just to target them, or potential bonded project payments.
That's
Okay,
Can I ask you about, line 52 through 54, under Public Works?
Yeah.
It's, so when you say to replace 2020 and 2030, to replace that dump that was purchased in 2020,
In 2030 on their 10-year cycle.
so that's just kind of this is kind of a catch-all, that first
They're just,
outside the year,
correct, they're not submitted projects, they just sit there in a 10-year, in the 5 to 10-year plan. But I didn't want them to total. So for our discussion, they'll essentially shift to that second page. That,
okay.
that won't be a part of the plan, but need to be a part of our discussion. Related to level of spending and capital.
Well, there's one thing I was thinking about, and, between meetings, and this was, after the Public Works thing. I do remember, I mean, there was a discussion about buying kind of high-end trucks because they would have a longer lifespan. And I believe we talked about Freightliners that way, and other brands that we invest in our Public Works department, and what the package is. And I believe that Troy agreed that a 12-year lifespan is more likely for those big trucks that we don't skimp on. So not that we skimp on any of them, because they're all pretty pricey, but I just want to bring that up, that maybe we look at the clock a little, because it just feels like one of the things that's happening is we're trying to be really careful about, renewing when we've said we were gonna renew, where this is gonna be on 7-year, this is gonna be on 10-year, whatever. I want to look at those realistically, knowing that maybe something doesn't quite doesn't live through its span. That's gonna happen, but it just feels like we're, for a better, I don't have a better phrase right now, but truck heavy in this plan. And I'm nervous about it, because I think that's, it's realistic, as far as putting it in the plan so that we can see it and see the impact, but it just feels like in some cases that we have quite a few more vehicles than we have staff, and I understand that some of it's seasonal work and stuff, but it does feel like you kind of lose track of how much you're actually spending and what those lifespans should be, and I just want to raise that issue.
I think that point is well taken, Steph, when we have conversations about fire equipment and you guys refurbishing your stuff and, putting Band-Aids on things because we want to make them last as long as possible. And one of the questions I had a few meetings ago was, how do we know that these vehicles are are not good anymore, or what is the methodology we use to, make sure that we're getting all of the light that we can out of them? Is there like a checklist? I don't know, I'm just making it up, but like. Certainly there's, this is obviously a conversation for Troy, but, how we know that it's time to replace the truck. We don't wanna wait till it's too late, but we also don't wanna do it artificially early. So, I mean, I'm just agreeing with.
And I
the
think,
words.
okay, thank you. I just, the other thing is some of it, you know, what care we're able to provide the vehicles. For instance, how many of them are parked outside? And because I would think that would shorten their lives, particularly if they kind of have salt left on them or something. So, you know, I'm just kind of wondering, do we have the wherewithal to really take care of everything we're buying? Because we've done some, I would say, in the last few years, some pretty heavy buying on the public works end, where vehicles are concerned. So I don't wanna like, you know, have us, do something that's not well informed, but I do remember when I was kind of playing back the clock here and talking and stuff, that I think we did talk about that as a 12-year instead of a 10.
I'm getting hung up on the word preliminary, and
That's fine.
I just, I kind of think of what the right word would be. But I just know, when I first looked at it, I wasn't sure what it meant, and I'm just thinking anybody like coming new to this plan is not gonna understand that that means that it's beyond the plan.
Yeah.
So what's a good word for that? I was,
Well, give me, what's the example? Preliminary,
well, the example is.
And 29 through 32.
Yeah, 29 through 32, those things,
Okay.
those are all things that we know will need to be replaced after 5 years.
ending? Or future, or,
Anticipatory, that's a word. Anticipate is discussing.
Anticipatory.
projected,
Projected.
Projected, I
yeah,
think projected is the word. I don't know, I just don't want that to be a
Understood.
reason for some of the,
Well, you're not,
Think that-
are you taking those lines out before you present it to Board of Finance, just out of curiosity? Or are you gonna
That's a
leave it in
question for
there?
us. That's not, I mean, that's really understood as our plan, so they're included for our knowledge at this point.
I think we had discussion a few meetings ago about trying to make the 5-year one as presented to both the taxpayer and the Board of Finance as simple as possible to capture, especially year one, the 5-year plan.
Yeah.
And anything extra where you gotta kind of combine together right now, probably should come off, my opinion is have it come off
We
before it
can,
gets presented.
we can have a
And
projected
you
list.
may include it on the 10-year side of things.
I think we
if
can
they
just
want to
have
look at that.
long-term or projected, we can have it, we can pull them as a separate list for projected, not submitted projects. To keep it clean.
If I remember correctly, if the Board of Finance, they wanna see year one and then they wanna see the whole plan. Or 2 through 5, because they're voted on separately.
They don't need to be voted on separately. And
They're voted on by the town separately.
well,
Year
one
one-
of
year
them's
one-
incorporated. in
Year one
the
is
budget.
incorporated into the town budget, then years 2 through 5 are voted on separately.
Correct, but to that end, I really do want to try to break from the habit of voting on a year one versus a year 5. The plan needs to be a comprehensive plan. The Board of Finance, the town votes on year one, and year one is what's reflected in each budget. But we can't vote for year one, make changes or decide. It needs to be comprehensively thought of, which is what's been missing. In my eyes. Largely, in discussions of it forward, or in years past, rather. I like that suggestion though, Stu. Or,
Yeah.
you know, separating it, you know, it's
I think it is.
keeping it in the long term.
Yeah, if you can squeeze it onto the 10-year side of things,
Yeah,
then I mean, if the paper was bigger, you could make more columns, but I think we're at the.
No, we're not going any bigger.
We're at the limit of what we can, present on one page kind of thing.
That's a discussion for off budget season.
Can I just say, because
Sure.
I kind of griped about it a lot, this is beautiful, the work you and Don have done. It's like, it's readable, it's really well organized. It's, I mean, I wasn't here on the 19th, so I'm still asking a lot of questions, but not because it's really unclear, but because I'm not oriented until right now, but.
Yeah, we're trying to, I guess, get things cleaned up to the greatest extent possible. So that moving forward, it can hopefully be a little bit more easy to discuss, given that there's so much of it to discuss.
So I like that all the panels are present, including the projected ones and stuff, as a CIP member, because it's really, you know, helps us see it all there.
So where do you guys want to start on tackling? Does anybody, well, I guess the first thing we should do, really, are there any projects in here that people have concerns about just in whole? Meaning, do we consider every project that's been submitted a valid project request or a wanted or necessary project request? Or are some of these things really just, or are any of these things that line? I don't have any that come to mind directly.
To me, so the school projects. There's three, they've given three options of, it might be A, it might be B, it might be C. And but we don't know when those things would be presented to the town. And we don't know which one the town's gonna choose, we won't know. So what we've done is put $1 million in each year. But even if they go with the cheapest one, the 17 million one, that bond payment is 1.5. So. I don't know, do we come up with an average number that it could be between, like whatever the median number is of what those options are? And put that in year 3, instead of $1 million.
It's a good question. I mean, I don't want the point. Jen, I mean, you're probably more versed on where they're thinking. I don't want to speak or make an assumption for them. They haven't, their request this year was just to level fund.
Well, didn't they ask for 1.5? No,
Level fund last year's request.
oh, I
yes.
see, I see.
We've
Yes.
So,
1.3.
1375.
Just as a point, this has not been updated since since we met last Friday and Jim's made some changes. But the change in this year's CIP over last year's CIP. And he took big numbers off lines 3 and 4. So it's not, it's
600,000
probably
less than whatever.
600, so it's about it was 1.225 million. And it's 600,000 less than that, so it's about 600,000 now over.
If you go to line 90 on your spreadsheet, that's accurate. The prior approved 1.749 was the local spending last year, which is a reduction from the year prior. This year, with the reduced numbers I had in lines 3 and 4, the local spending is 2.343 million.
And I don't know what last year's was, so. I don't know what the increase is, but I just a rough guesstimate, it's about 600,000 or more.
Yep.
But before, and so. With the other increases I have in my budget. With the old number, it was like a 32.1% increase in the budget, total budget. And so. Based on. The increases here. And the other increases in the budget. Troy's not getting as much as he wants, because he's asking for $345,000 for pavement. That's not gonna happen. But we have a big legal bill coming up or a unbelievable EPA bill. Yeah,
Oh,
EPA.
is that the
Fatal
Ashford
Rock.
line thing?
Yeah, so we can either spend 20,000 on legal fees or we can spend 30 million paying the government back. And I would rather pay the 20. And then the ARPA money ended for the senior center, so that's another 11,000. So these are numbers that I've got to take in that may affect how much we can increase CIP overall. Because each of us in our own mind have an amount that we think will pass at referendum. And I know everybody's number is a little different, but we gotta come down to something where I gotta present something that I think will pass.
Just, could you talk a little bit about why you have faith in the 20,000 saving, making that big of a save?
Well, because I talked to the lawyer that she deals with the EPA all the time and she's done this before and she said.
She has a good record.
She has a good record and she said that generally the EPA doesn't want to charge municipalities. But if you don't ask the right way, they
Right.
charge you. So.
So what's our argument?
Her argument is that you did this and we didn't ask you to, so I don't know what the argument is. That's why I'm paying a lawyer.
Okay. Well, I just
If
would
I
like a
was smart enough to figure that out on myself, I
Since
would
it's
be
such a
paying them
big
20,000.
ticket thing, I just would
Yeah.
like a rudimentary,
Well,
understanding
that-
of it, but
What I did was I
not asking for, legal
I asked her
strategy.
for a number that it would definitely be under, and that's what the $20,000. Because, Ashford's picking up the other half of this, because it's all one big.
Brownfield.
Yeah, that's a polite way of putting what I was gonna say. We were in the same color scheme.
So I'm just trying to
Okay.
understand that, what you're talking about, so,
It's not on there, it's a budgetary.
no, I know, but, so you guys met on whatever day you met and talked about the CIP plan as it, in conjunction with what you have going on in your budget.
Yes,
And changed numbers.
I pulled some numbers down from Pete's discussion.
Yes.
With the Board of Selectmen on Monday, because he expressed his strong concerns about the increase from 1.7 to 2.6 or 2.9 local spending, whatever it was.
well,
But with the clear direction that was really subject to change. and
this
up to
is
committee.
very subject to change. This is
Yeah.
the last numbers that Donna gave me at the beginning of last week, I believe. March 6th, she gave it to me. It was the total increase in the town budget was 32.1%. And I didn't think that would pass.
So. Yes, so to answer your question, Jen, I did lower the numbers just as a point of discussion to get closer to where Pete
Because,
wants to go.
yeah, because
We can do whatever we
the
want.
last sheet we got at the last CIP meeting, I believe line 3 was at 1 and line 4 was at 1.375. And Jim has lowered them to 8 and 1 even.
So what, I mean, I guess, is the question we have to ask, what is your target? I mean, why don't we just have that question?
I don't know what my target is yet. My target is in conjunction with my other big spending, of which I've got to reduce some. I'd like to have, my target is to come out with a 4.2% increase, I start working with 4.5% increase over last year, and I can't remember what I had a number here. A 4.5% increase in the total town budget is $250,000.
So one of the concerns I have, and I've expressed this with Pete, is the discussion of this as a percent increase in your budget. Is just flawed in its very nature. I'm not saying, I understand, there is no world where we're at here where a plan that presents anywhere close to funding anything on it is going to be in the neighborhood of that percentage. What? I don't know, smarter people in the room than me, may have ideas as to how we can start to divorce or break out that pricing and those increases in presentation to the town, because part of my concern here is the town really deserves to understand what the actual need is, so that they can kind of make their own decisions and divorce it from whatever the overall, you know, budgetary needs are. what
We,
the
we
increase-
we may need to have a statutory, change in town where CIP voted on separately from the rest of the town budget.
Or one giant budget, right, Pete? You go-
Or, well, that's what Holland does, they have one referendum question, do you want it passed or no? And it's schools, town, CIP, the whole shebang go, one question, and
Well. Frankly, I don't know, I don't know if I follow that pattern, because they have more repeat referendums
Yes.
than just about anyone that,
Yeah.
between,
Yes.
well, Stafford probably, not Stafford, Coventry probably has a
Yeah.
more beat.
no, and I
But-
think that's the reason, and
But
I think
those
you
are
wanna-
towns though that do the sort
Right.
of percentage thing, and it's, our picture is just so complicated, I don't know if it's fair to like look at it that simplistically, because we've deferred so much capital. We've just deferred it, and so, you know, if you're trying to really be responsible about not letting it go into further decay and trying to really address it, and I know you know this, but you're thinking about, I mean, I just feel like, you know, otherwise we just kind of throw in the towel and say, why do we have a capital planning group?
I understand your frustration, believe me, I do, and I have the same frustrations. It's just that I am really trying to balance it with getting it passed. And referendum, that's my chief concern is, how high can I go? Before I'm at 50% +1 to 50% -1. That's,
But with that said, Pete, you're already discussing the town people's opportunity to provide feedback in that if we're not
Right.
presenting that, you know, presenting the need as it is, you're.
well, that'll
you're
come out,
coming
and that's why we have a town hearing. And that's where it needs to be presented, but
So,
I,
I'm trying to
guess I
think,
have-
I'm trying to think what the margin was last year on the failure anyway, it was pretty close, wasn't it?
it was pretty close on the failure at
I
5
think
and
we
a
should
half or
revisit that,
something, yeah.
Should
So
revisit
that's why my aim right now is 4.5, where I really think 3 would pass, 4 might pass, 4.5 is getting close and.
for point of context, your budget increase is greater than that, right? Just in and of itself.
Yes,
So there would be.
Without
zero-
but
this,
Yes,
without that, but that's something that I gotta work on. So, yeah, right now I've got $345,000 going to pavement out of a possible $240,000 increase. So that's not happening.
So the other point, and I'm only gonna mention it because it came up on Monday, was it's exploration of the debt limit policy, which in and of itself is fine, but there isn't a single, any of the major projects on this list would not be able to be funded at all under the recommended limits in that policy, including the fire station or the small school project. So my discussion is then, you know, a debt limit fiscal, so, you know, debt limits are fine. But if we're gonna limit the amount of bonded debt, then we have to plan by saving. And increasing funding to capital, you know, there has
so
to be a
you'll have,
long-term planning.
someone's
strategy.
gonna have to give me a nutshell, tutorial on debt limit. I mean, is it as simple as it sounds, we don't incur debt?
Above a
above a
certain
certain
percent,
amount.
yeah.
Pretty much.
And according to, this is what, I asked this question last year, and we've had another one this year, when the auditors do their presentation of, you know, the town audit. I asked him last year about the percentage of the overall budgets, and he said, for bond payment. So in our case, our budgets are right around 20 million, he said 10%. At the table, I mean, afterward, I asked him an email question clarifying, well, if we can't, you know, if you're building a school, some of those payments are gonna be, you know, a few years, they're gonna be like 3 million instead of 2 million, that's 10% of our overall budget. And he said, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same for if you got like a 30-year loan or whatever, 30-year bond or a 20-year bond.
20-year
It
bond.
doesn't, it has to show a pattern toward getting,
That's what I was just told. I don't know
Getting
this for.
Yeah.
it has to show a pattern toward getting closer there or being in that 2 million range or something, so it's not hard and
we're
fast,
not-
like you can never have something
We
exceed
just
it.
started looking at it. We've got a rough draft of what we should be looking at. It says you can't, there's simple stuff in there, like you can't take debt that's illegal.
I mean, that seems
That's a
like
good start.
thing.
I thought that was a good start too, but there's simple stuff like that, and then it works in percentage of grand list and. I just heard a number today that you get an extra $500,000 of tax income for every $25 million worth of development. So we need to put in some development, so.
-50 of it.
So, you know, I know that there was a lot of people that were very upset at the warehouse, but if we had a warehouse, we'd have a school too.
So,
This is too much.
I feel like this is an exercise in futility at this point, and I don't mean to be fatalistic, but if your goal is to get to a certain percentage of increase that you feel is going to pass, and we are an advisory board to your board, like what, we don't have a lot to say.
Well,
We do though.
you do, and.
I do,
It's our
but
plan.
like,
It's our
And
plan.
the thing is that the way it's presented in this town is first it goes to the Board of Finance, so we have some input. And then the Board of Finance will be taking a look at it to see what they think will also pass. It's not what I think will pass, it's what the Board of Finance thinks will pass, because the Board of Finance, that's their job.
so
My
it's,
job is to get as much stuff as I can.
so is our, I guess, mandate, if you will, to talk about all of the stuff that's highlighted or all the stuff that's on the plan. And debate whether it should stay in or go out.
That,
Yes.
whether there's shifts to be made, whether there's, what our.
Push them out of your-
our local spending maybe, what the strategy is overarching is to how to get from A to B.
So I feel like we should start, that conversation, because I feel like if we just do
Yep.
the abstract stuff, we're gonna be here all night.
If you look at column K, kind of the local fund expenditure for year one is probably the one you want to review first to see if one is the dollar amount appropriate. You want to push it out. There's not a lot of give and take for alternate funds off budget, so to speak. Fund 17 is the emergency services, and there's hits against that, and there's the LoCIP funding, which is a few hits against that. Those are marked in column L, typically for off budget items. So the one that affects Pete's budget is column K. And I would argue, let's skip lines 3 and 4 for now. In terms of, those are big issues there. But let's go down through the 20 or so projects that are under consideration in column K. Keep in mind, some of those are already committed leases, especially along the lines of the 5 or so projects that are in public works already, that you have no short of turning the equipment back in, there's no choice of paying that one.
Those are all bold.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I'm
and
not
I
perfect,
think-
but hopefully.
I think they are.
They are.
So, yeah, there are a couple of new ones this year. Well, why don't we just go down, and just tackle them one at a time. So new for this year, there's the first one, and it's highlighted, the first one on the list is the line 21, design and engineering, 25 Old Front Road, the additional $200,000 requested for design and engineering of whatever those projects become through the maintenance and services facilities building committee. That is showing that it's Fund 04. Largely because I just copied what was existing from the 100,000,
What does that committee have for funding available now?
200,000.
Minus the
minus
4,
40,
minus 40
yeah.
for the consultant.
I have it up
So
here.
these,
Yeah, that 200,000 is in column L, because that's a previous commitment. from last year.
Correct, it's 13, so they have $200,000 allocated to the committee in the prior year, row 13. 160,000 of that is still uncommitted, or that they could use for their.
So-
So they would have $360,000?
Plus, well, they would have $360,000, but they also have the $100,000 for. And row 20, that was previously approved for that same purpose, and then another $10,000. Previously approved, for. Survey, 25 old farms, so there's $590,000 requests or committed funds. For this currently, which is what I talked about at length, back in the day.
And I think given that, and the 800,000 from line 3 is covering the same thing, so we may wanna cut down line 3. So that, based on the fact that there's already 500,000 down there.
I think we wanna pull that new 200,000 requests altogether, quite frankly, that's my opinion. Because it doesn't belong under the control of the fire department, it should be through the committee, but. You guys know my stance.
Is that 200,000 there, the one that was already committed from the previous year?
No, line
Or is that-
21 is an additional $200,000 for design engineering. Above that 200 allocated.
That they put in as a request.
And it was a request from Wellington Hill, not from.
Not from the facilities.
Facilities committee.
Why is it in row L instead of K?
Because
Because-
I funded from Fund 04 instead of it being a capital budget. It's coming from reserve, so it's not hitting local tax.
Got it.
I guess I don't understand why it's not, why the committee didn't ask for it.
I think it's because, I don't know either, sorry.
Well, wasn't it on the books before?
Yeah,
This request was on the books before, and the recommendation was for that money to be
It was
allocated to the committee instead, so that they could use it for
correct,
whatever project was going to evolve from the committee.
which is what was done last year,
What was
the $200,000. So
A different 200,000.
a different 200,000, but the request, we put zero, we pulled the request last year and gave the committee the $200,000. Because he was on board in that committee.
So can we just move,
Where's that committee
Pardon my-
line? Is that on here or no?
Yeah, line 13. Prior approved.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I speak a little bit to help answer a couple of these questions?
Yeah, certainly, Mike, please. Help us.
Thank you. Mike McCoo again, Wellington Hill Fire Department, and I do represent the fire department on the Facilities Building Committee. The simple answer to the question of why didn't the Facilities Building Committee submit these requests is that the Facilities Building Committee did not know going into this capital season that they would or should be submitting the requests currently, because the committee did not have a project at hand yet for a request. Further, the fire departments receive notification, as they are typically budget submitting organizations, to submit a capital request. So they did that. Not that means this discussion isn't important and it may get moved around, but that's the reason no one was trying to thwart this thought process. This thought process just wasn't that developed back in November.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
And in the bigger picture, how much money does that committee need in year one? They have 160 available to them now. What did the school building committee end up using?
130,000.
yeah.
yeah, but that's it's a different mission.
It's a different mission because they're not only looking to see what to build, but they have to start getting property and doing stuff. Because,
Not until the taxpayer
Right.
has an approved project, so. again,
Right.
Like, they're not buying anything or. They're not doing anything different than the due diligence.
So
school
they
building
still have
committee,
$160,000 there to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
surveying and stuff still, correct?
and preliminary designs. to get the
Preliminary
budget.
designs.
I have a question. So I just want to address the comment that Mike made. I don't think that there's certainly not a feeling on my part that there was any attempt to thwart. I think that just, it was a question about
who submitted.
Yeah, and why, and can we make it so that it goes into the committee as opposed to just sitting there not being used?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to imply there was anything deceptive there, I just think.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I did.
Real quick, when Chief Snyder and I talked about this, I really think it was. We didn't know where the 200,000 from last year is, whether it was tied to Wilton Hill Fire Department, but I think. And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, that it was to ensure that the committee had money. So that July 1, if we get the study back and we have a direction, we can go and do something.
Yeah, if you review the various meetings we've attended, the thought process has developed and sort of zigged and zagged a little bit throughout this process as more information has been available. And so even various people in this room tonight know from certain meetings, the thought process was this should be for any work of the committee. But then when it went back to the Board of Finance for some of the requests that have gone to the Board of Finance have been met with questions and some very good intended redirection of what the Board of Finance or other people thought the 200,000 should be used for. So the committee has evolved its work based on some of that guidance. You know, we've talked about various things from second attempts at remediating the mold at 426 River Road to, you know, if the money should be spent on surveying to get to know certain pieces of property, or if it should be more planning purposes. And some ideas were rejected. So my point is the thought process has evolved, and I don't think that, like a project that's been clearly defined, I don't think it's that specific. So whatever the committee next thinks they should be asking for, they're going to bring forward as a recommendation up to the Board of Selectmen and then through the process to Board of Finance and the townspeople. But there is not, while there's a clear charge for the committee, there is not a clearly defined specific program that $200,000 already in the budget is assigned to.
Mike,
Sorry,
can
it was
I?
a long answer.
No, that's all right, thank you. Can I ask you a quick question? I mean, beyond, once
Yeah.
this initial station location study hits, is there the expectation that you guys are gonna implement and get to a point where you have a budget, preliminary designs and, you know, options to present to the town? Or are you guys just expecting this $40,000 commitment to get you to hey, we're building something?
Well, I believe based on the initial meetings with the consultant, which are the questions and answers were very much in line with the intent of the RFP. And that was to not only do sort of a data analysis, a data gathering and data analysis, which the consultant would then produce sort of recommendations from, but the consultant is also going to produce a couple different options for recommendations because it's not within his purview or understanding to say only one option is ideal for any particular town. So he is going to offer a couple of different options that say, I'll oversimplify it. If you want to cover 50% of the town within a desired time frame, then you can do it with your current facilities and you should do renovations. Or if you want to cover 80% of the town within that same time frame, you need to move apparatus to other locations yet to be identified. And he will provide with those options some order of magnitude. So I hope that answers the question.
No, it does loosely, but
I have a question. Is it worthwhile to have a discussion about the impact of moving that 200,000 to year 2?
yeah, it'll reflect available fund balance year 2. We currently have a lot of projects in year 2.
Yeah,
The other consideration, that's one option. The other consideration is, I mean, since they are still very undefined and do still have 160,000 for the committee plus some holdover requests that may or may not be negotiated, as Mike said earlier. Is this not something, I'm asking the Board of Finance people in the room, is this not something they could just request additional funds directly from the Board of Finance? when they have a sense of direction that is
Yeah, that's,
significantly more defined than
Mhm.
yeah,
where they're at.
typically, what will happen.
You're right, I didn't realize where you were getting that other, the 600 total IC, so that you could argue that it's kind
Yeah,
of.
my thought is rather than tie it up
representative.
prematurely when we have a lot of big expenses,
Yeah.
it's literally to pull it with no, you know, no detriment to the mission of the hill. But there's a lot of funds tied up there.
Well, if you kind of pace it out a little bit, I mean, the report should be due, by the end of the fiscal year at least, and I would think. And then you've got 160 to start in fiscal year 26, right?
Mhm.
And so you've already, you've got some mojo there. If it's moving faster, or there's, a sense that it could move faster to the betterment of the town, then that's a Board of Finance.
Yeah, I
Issue.
mean, that is true,
Yeah.
because we'll have requests again in November or December,
Mhm.
like that window will open, so there's really probably a 6-month period.
But,
Where they,
but putting my Board of Finance on, if we don't have something in the plan, we're gonna say, how come we don't have something in the plan?
Yeah.
Why didn't we take it, why didn't we put
They
that?
know
in?
about, that
Yeah.
shuffle, it's not like, it's not.
I think moving it out a year. I mean, Christina, to your point, moving it out a year keeps it on the books and it gives us an opportunity to have a discussion about it, and there may be something more clearly. Realized at that point. And
Yeah,
maybe 200,000 is a laughable amount at that point, because they'll be like, we need $100 billion.
yeah,
yeah, we can definitely move it and see what that does to fund balances and available spending for sure. The only other thing I suggest, or I bring up as a point, is that the reality is the likelihood that the design of any station is inevitably gonna be a part of the bonded project. Meaning, same thing as it was with the school, so there isn't gonna need to be. There doesn't necessarily need to be what could be $1 million worth of design fees that are paid out of the budget. It could be a part of that bonded project, similar to the approach with the school. There was $5 million in that school bond referendum for design, architecture, and engineering, fees related to developing that project. I would anticipate this is likely going to be a similar methodology. With that said, I also appreciate the need to commit, to advancing funding to not bond as much. But that goes back to Pete's point, where if we're not gonna save, then, if we're trying to hit an artificial budget target and we're not really gonna build capital and save for these projects, then we're cutting ourselves from both ends,
We're gonna pay at the other end when we do get a bond.
Right.
Exactly, and it's gonna cost a lot more.
Yes, it's gonna cost a lot, yeah, I got that, yeah.
So I mean, it's a two-sided coin. Let's start by moving it out for the purposes of now, so we can move on to another topic.
And would it be appropriate to move that to line 13 as opposed to line 21? Put it in the building committee thing.
That's what we did last year. So, I would prefer to see it there, because I think it's appropriate there.
I agree.
But what do you guys all think?
Which year are we talking about?
Year 2, moving the 200,000 from year 1, line 20 to year 2, line 12.
Line 21.
Sorry, the line 21.
21 and
21.
13.
21 and 13.
13, yes.
Oh, I deleted the row. Sorry, let me put that row back, because that's gonna screw up this whole conversation. Yes, my apologies.
That should go up to line 13. 26, 27, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And for now, we'll capture it as a Fund 04.
Jim, Mike McCoo here on that.
Yes, sir.
I think in the end, that's administrative, so I think it can go any way. I just don't want people maybe having the misconception that the committee has requested that because it's now sitting in the committee's line when the committee didn't take that action. But again, I think that's purely administrative. We presumably, a lot of us will be here for the conversation in November or December, and we will remember this conversation. But the fire department does understand the pushing it out and does understand the conversation about whether it should be through the committee instead. So we're not fighting it, just looking for clarity.
Yeah, then I'm just trying to streamline, not streamline, but that's the best word I got.
Kind of simplified, yeah.
Simplify what are multiple requests for multiple years. The project has been on the board for a very long time and it does need to be addressed.
Would that then allow us to reduce, K3 from 800,000 to 600? And you end up kind of the same net amount?
Let's get through the rest and we'll see where that is.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it doesn't like help us.
It doesn't because it's fund for the different, yeah. We're gonna push stuff from year 2, year 3, and year 4, I'm sure too. So let's see where we go for the time being. All right, so
Next one's 23.
23, 55,000 bucks for a parking lot replacement.
at the current Wellington Health Station, that's carried in the selecting budget.
Yeah,
That is an extension or additional funding for the project above the 35,000 previously approved last year.
that's because they gotta rebid on it and they couldn't do it for the 35, that's why they asked for the additional 65.
So now it's a
And
hundred.
that is sinking into their septic system. So I believe that's a project that is
So
in the urgent class.
So is it $100,000 now, or is it?
Yes,
Okay,
that's how, yes, that's how it's clarified.
and how would that work though, because you can't carry the 35,000, oh, you can't bank it. It's use it or lose it,
will they still be using
Is
it?
but when?
Along with the 65, it'll all be going away.
But
Well,
the
depending on-
35 is in your operating budget this year,
Yeah,
so after June 30th,
No, the streets operating.
it's not, you can't use it anymore. If you haven't used it yet.
That's a good point.
Justina, I think the solution would be to transfer it to a different fund. Is that correct? So it carries over? A non-lapsing
Yeah.
fund? Because
Yeah.
it'll be part of, it just couldn't be part of the project because it wasn't enough.
Right.
is that a board of finance move?
Yeah.
Yes.
Somebody's gotta ask the board of finance. Mike.
Well, it's in your budget, right, Pete? Nice try, though.
So you remember to tell me, how's that?
All right, we'll work on it together.
All right,
Well, that's the spirit.
So for the purposes of making sure the current request is of 65,000. Can that stay?
In,
I
That
think,
can stay
year
as
one.
as a year 1 in his budget,
yeah,
correct?
I think
And
so.
it's just a matter of having you guys
Transfer.
having to figure out the 35,000 logistics.
Yeah. I mean,
where would you put it?
the only thing is, like, if, and Donna, correct me if I'm wrong about this, would you create a capital projects fund? And maybe put the 65,000 in that as well, that would take it off of local funds and put it into the other. No, it wouldn't, we still have to move it in. Forget it, forget that logic. Yeah. So it still has to come out of 930.
Okay, how do we feel? Well, I mean, it sounds like it's urgent. I hate spending money
Yeah.
on that property for a parking lot replacement. That's my only real concern.
It's been on the books for a long time.
I know, but we don't know what's gonna happen to that station and we're replacing the parking lot for a building that we don't know.
Right, but we do know that nothing's happening for years.
And I
That's
also
true.
think to Chief Snyder's point, it's going to be used for something in the future, whether it's we have to sell it or like use it for a town,
But
well, whatever happens to it, they're gonna need a parking
Annex or
lot.
something, yeah.
So, and if it's dipping into the septic system, I feel like that's kind of,
It's pretty bad.
yeah, if it's, the reality is if we're not gonna get 3 to 5 years out of it. As it stands, then it needs to get done, so let's get it done.
Okay.
But it is a Band-Aid. It is an expensive Band-Aid. And it's one that we've put off for a long time.
yes.
All right,
Okay.
We have to let the Band-Aid know.
squad 113 refurbish. That is a $250,000 ask for refurbish to get another I forget the age of that vehicle, I apologize.
2003.
That 22-year-old vehicle, to give it another, to extend things to the 30+ years, we've extended everything else. There is balance in Fund 17 to capture that, so I don't think because that's a refurbished, with your prior comment, we can't.
You can't do a
lease it,
lease.
We can finance
There's
it,
not
but
short of trying to get a used vehicle loan from the bank, there's no way to do that. It's mechanical work to the trucks.
so easier to pay out with fund balance in Fund 17, that's, I think, a lot of preference, but what do you guys think?
Agreed.
Yeah, and. Fire departments know about Fund 17 because that's their lifeline, so. Because the
Or
original,
the town's lifeline, depending on how you look at it.
yeah,
But typically apparatus, mostly, except for the future 5 years.
this was,
Fund 17 pays for the ambulances, they pay for the fire truck, you know,
right,
the tanker at Woken Hill, refurbishment here and there, and so on and so on, so.
Well, we
But
have,
it's good, it's gone a long
but
way.
the fund, the ask from Fund 17 was originally from the fire department, right? We didn't,
Yes.
you didn't ask for it from something else and we
No,
threw in
no, we
17.
thought
No,
Fund 17 was
That's all I need to know, I'm happy with it.
I don't think you guys can request what funds are coming from, can you? I put it in Fund 17, I don't remember seeing a request, but.
The agencies or the departments do not have the authority to say what fund it comes from, but ultimately it's the Board of Finance decide where to come from. But we have some say over what can or can't come out of Fund 17. And I think it's best interest for everybody that if the fire department says that it can come out of 17 and Donna says we have the fund balance enough to do it in Fund 17, it makes sense for it to come.
Yeah, we do, we have a volatile change now because there's some. We cleared out a couple of projects, but there's probably $700,000. And change in there. So that's kind of a no-brainer. Air containment system, that's related to the OSHA.
Yes,
Repairs as well, that needs to get done. Question is, I have it targeted in the selectmen's budget. Anybody else? Hearing none.
Seems good.
All right, what do we got? Public Works.
roadside mower,
We got a bunch of recurring leases. We got the new roadside mower. That is $103,000. The lease payment on that is $17,000 for a 7-year lease. Your recurring debt.
That seems like a big expense to have not already been on the plan.
That would
To have that come in as a year one emergency thing, it seems
39.
like it's probably not an emergency, because if it was, it would have been on the plan last year. So I don't know, if that's something that could get pushed out at least 1 year.
I think between now and whenever, that's a question for Troy.
Mm.
I don't know why it would be an emergency suddenly and not last year, unless something happened.
There was ongoing maintenance costs.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's cut the broke down every time.
Exactly what it was, spent more time in the shop than it did on the, I think that was his words.
I mean, 2009 means,
It's a 16-year-old mower,
yeah,
so. It's probably
God, 2009 was already that far back.
probably long past the prime. I mean, yeah, nobody's arguing it's not a valid request. It's just,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was more, think do we want to lease it or do we want to try to pay for it, have fun for it? Rather than lease it was my big discussion on this, not should we
Yeah.
push.
Well,
It depends on
I
what. we
mean,
do.
there's also a loader and a new dump truck as well. So it's just a lot of equipment.
Didn't we ask them to prioritize?
Yeah, and it's in the
Yeah,
minutes,
and I'm looking for it
actually.
now.
Cause
He,
I asked him the question, I think he said.
So, and, since we're talking about all equipment now, there's a 2-year lead time from point of purchase on that dump. You're actually receiving it, so put it at the 12-year replacement window step. And I believe. I think the dump was a priority. Was. It's in, yeah, I got it, it's page 3 of those minutes, the middle paragraph from the.
Page what?
The priorities would be the plow truck, the mower, and the loader in that order.
Plow truck, what's that?
The
So he's got the
dump.
mower as number 3, I'd say we move it
He's got
out.
the mowers 2,
Two,
Oh, I thought you said
he's
that.
got the mowers 2,
loader is 3.
loader is 3, he said he would be okay pushing the loader out a year. But keep the other 2.
No, if there's a 2-year lead time for that new dump truck. Is it proper to reflect, at some point we need to commit to it, which is probably
That's
this
what
coming
it-
year, but it's not gonna be expended in year 1.
That's what he's saying from the funds being available and the purchase commitment being made.
Right, commitment's there, but in terms of actual expenditures for the year, that money's not gonna go. Be spent in year 1, might not even be spent in year 2.
But it does need to be funded.
Right.
The
And I'm telling
funds-
this is more of a presentation thing, I don't mind the commitment to the truck.
Yeah.
But right now, if you add up year 1, you see that payment for the dump truck in year 1. There is no payment gonna be made in year 1.
Oh, I get what you're saying. So similar to what just happened with the fire. We had a lease that. Sat there, and it's, well, that was supposed to come from 17
And,
to.
but because Fund 17 carries over from year to year, we're able to do that. I don't know the fund source for this one, is that able to carry over? Or your idea of having a capital project fund that carries over? This will be another one of those.
We have, it's a capital, we have a
Capital
capital
reserve,
reserve.
yeah.
And so the question really becomes is the lease, do we show it as a lease sitting in year 3, but we'd have to make the commitment. And we can't really show that in the plan.
That's tough, because what, when you end up at the town meeting where you're approving it, which you wouldn't if it's a lease, selectmen have to, but. First question is it in the CIP plan?
Yeah.
Did you plan for it? And then they're gonna go, no, it's in year 3.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah, it just gets complicated. Convoluted. Very fast.
I'm concerned about lead time and the actual need impact on all of these major equipment, particularly the fire trucks in general.
Yeah, it looks like it's a trend that will continue with this and other projects that you can't just go out and walk into the dealer, give me one of those, and walk out with it.
Donna, is there a way to create like a special fund to try to manage these lead times that we don't really know? That we don't know if it's gonna be 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, but to put that money somewhere where it's not gonna get lost at the end of the fiscal year. Well, the 311 is another use it or lose it line item. So could that lease, if lease payment ends up not being made because of lead time, could it go into, is it Fund 03?
Yes,
That's like-
usually they transfer the funds over.
Okay, and do you create a special line item or something?
Yes, I do.
So is that what happens normally? That, like, would we have to, like, plan for that to happen? Or should we say here, okay, this lease payment, we know it's gonna take 2 years for it to get ordered from the time it's approved, so just make the funding source be Fund 03 the first 2 years, and then the 311 be the funding source.
So we don't. I don't know if we know, he said it could be 16 to 20 months, it could be longer, it could be less. I also don't know if there's a down payment need,
Yeah,
I don't know how is that typically handled, from the.
if there's a trade-in, that goes toward the cost of the new purchase. But usually there's not the value. And
With the fire trucks, usually it's basically a contract you sign saying we commit to buy the truck and that's puts you on the hook for it. There are occasionally, the fire side of things, discounts to pay for the chassis. Because that really comes from a different vendor than we putting the dump body on and finishing the truck. And but the other thing you can do is if you left it, say in year 1 and 2, and you moved it into the fund, that was a 3. When it comes time to actually take delivery of the truck, you could actually use the 2 years of savings, I'd say, set aside towards the payment of the truck and lease less. So you don't pay as much interest over the course, or shorten the lease, one or the other. So you could say, hey, you know, it's gonna be a $300,000 truck or whatever it's gonna be. And you had estimated doing 30, almost 50,000 a year. So let's say the payment got pushed out 2 years, you have 100,000 of cash set aside for that truck. So instead of doing a 7-year lease, you do a 5-year, or the other side is to borrow less money and give them 100,000 in cash for the rest of the lease. Kind of thing, so it does give you some opportunities to want to make a little interest on it, or not pay as much interest when the lease
Yeah,
period comes along.
that's a good idea.
Sounds like we gotta capture it this year then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think.
Cause it still has
Get
come
back-
out 311 this year, and then, yeah.
I have a question about the equipment in and of itself and the bold lines 34 through 38.
Prior to it, so.
I understand that. There's 3 dump trucks.
Yep.
So we are buying a new dump truck, so we will now have 4 dump trucks.
We have 4 dump trucks. This replaces the existing
One that's already
10-year-old
paid off.
dump truck. Yeah, we'll pay it off.
When does
We
small
have-
dump
I think
truck
we
go?
actually 5,
The other thing,
We have a couple on retirement. But
yeah.
we also have in plan to try to bring plowing under the town because we're having an incredibly difficult time finding contractors to plow. So if with an extra dump, you can, and an extra driver, you can plow the roads and have the savings on the contractor side of plowing.
Pete, do we dictate a ballpark that we're willing to pay when we put out bids?
Yes, oh, and
What, should we raise that, whatever that,
it'd be cheaper to buy a new dump truck, I think.
no, I don't
Because
know.
we're significantly below state levels right now, and the state is having trouble finding contractors. That's at least what I'm told. I'm not out bidding these things.
This is
We
probably,
are paying significantly less than the state's paying for the same service.
this is a conversation that probably we should have had, or I should have had a couple months ago, but, like, I'm just wondering, we're a pretty small town, and I'm just wondering how much equipment we need to maintain our stuff. Like, I have no concept of that at all. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, the problem is that we have very few people and a lot of roadway. So while we're a small town population, we're not a small town road miles.
Yeah, I spoke for
Where the-
Troy about that
where-
today too, and we have the same
Yeah,
amount of miles and for a town that would only have 12 staff. that
We
the
have-
same.
We have about what Hartford proper is space wise, you know, area wise. And it's like 38, isn't it, something square miles?
it's 70 miles of road, I know that,
Yeah.
it's a lot of miles.
The number of trucks reflects the cycle time of so-called doing their route. The average storm, whatever that may be, the typically, and Christina, I think you've ridden around with them, that they have to do the same route, you know, at least twice or 3 or 4 times. How long is a storm? How much salt do they have to put down, so on and so on. When you go from 5 trucks to 4, they're now picking up more miles, and the amount of time to get one route done is extended. So the 3 trucks, they get, there you can do it with 1 truck, they get to it eventually. But the expectations, I think, of the traveling public is, they want those roads cleaned up relatively soon. And this is kind of the number they've ended up with over the years.
Yeah, right now we got 4 guys working for public, four workers at Public Works driving plus a half-time.
And how
So
many,
that's why we have 5 trucks, is because
so how many contractors?
One,
So it's 5 routes?
I don't, I'm not gonna say a number because I'll be wrong. I try to keep up with this stuff and
Well, I mean, I'd like to revisit this conversation, probably not tonight, but I think for the purposes of capital planning, I feel like it would be helpful for us to understand, for me to understand what is a reasonable amount of equipment that a town our size with our whatever amount of roads needs.
I mean, my reaction to that initially with that bigger truck is requesting for a truck, I think. My guess would be as public works director, that's probably what he feels.
But I'm not talking about just the dump trucks, I'm talking about all of the stuff that has been across the years. Like, we have this conversation in various iterations every year about public works.
one of the issues, as I understand it, is that almost every state except for Connecticut works on a county system for this stuff.
right,
And that way instead of every town needing a mower, every county has 2 mowers for 12 towns. So that's how you get the economy of scale. And Connecticut, for whatever reason, has decided to go to home rule towns. And it's costing us money, and if we can't regionalize something, we're gonna flop or something.
And it has been tried, I know even on the Homeland Security side, they've tried to share some things. But there's even talk in Eastern Connecticut, like sharing a tree trimming truck, so instead of paying a contractor to come in. But the argument was, well, it broke while you were using it, you have to pay for the repair. Or I used it this many hours, you used it that many hours, you gotta split it from there.
That's big in the fire service for Demus Region 4, I know that.
Then in terms of trained personnel, well, he's going up in the bucket is very much of a specialty. Training and such, that gee, I don't have any guys that are trained to do that, but I still wanna borrow your truck and I borrow your people too. And it's a hard thing to do.
Slippery slope.
Mhm.
But Jen, it's also very subjective, it depends on. Depends on who's running the operation, who's operating these machines. Whether they think this component is important or not versus the others, they all have opinions. And then with just the conditions, what's happening with the weather and what is happening on a particular day where they think they need this thing or that. I don't know if there's.
I mean, if you looked at just the previous 2 years, not including this winter, we got virtually no snow. I'm sure there was enough ice and salt and sand and stuff to put down, but there was hardly any snow. Well, if you said, okay, this is the snow we're gonna get for the next 10 years, we can get rid of half the trucks. But, storm like, what was it, 2015, when we
Yeah,
had storm after storm after storm.
and no salt,
It got to the point where they couldn't even push it back anymore with the plows and had to.
and that's
start
like,
in order.
I have PTSD from that year. So that's why I'm like, we need a big salt check. Nobody else thinks we do because,
We don't have
they didn't live
the.
through it.
yeah, and
Or
and
through the
it,
angst
and
of
it probably isn't. I'm just remembering that
Yeah, I
very, very
remember that
scary
year.
time. And we just couldn't do anything, so it was.
But having said that, and I know that this sounds like a lot of work, but it is part of good management. I really kind of feel like we need to sort of do something where we capture the hours on the pieces of equipment. And something that can go to CIP and even Board of Finance for that matter, and you of course be. But to kind of log this, because I do remember when certain things were discussed on CIP that we said yes to, that were new. New things like the what was it, the excavator. that, you know, it was couched that that would be something that Public Works could really carve into the road projects a lot by getting this excavator. And I know that we do, yeah, I know that we do that we do other things with it, but the point is, the road projects are coming up now to bat, and
Yeah.
we're not doing that. We're, that's part of the cost of doing the project without the excavator really carving into that. And I think it's like, we have a small department, we have 4 guys, and it's like, you know, how much can they do? But when we bought it, there was
Yeah.
you know, a narrative that if we get this, we can really offset our costs, putting in those initial catch basins and stuff. Don't you remember that?
I do.
Cause I do, and so I think in that sense, the equipment's there and it's grown. And now we're trying to sustain it all. I think it's reasonable for us to ask, how many hours are logged on each of these pieces?
Yeah, we can track, remember, we did have that conversation, I'm gonna go to minutes now. We
And
asked
but then you gotta be fair about it, because some of it's seasonal. So, you know, it's not like,
It
all
related to
year
the
round.
dump, he said there's not an industry standard, but that on average, it's 10 years due to corrosion salt on some of these vehicles, for the dump specifically. And he did note that the dump has some damage to the frame of the truck, recall, that needs repair.
Yeah.
It's tore the exhaust pipe off a little this year too. Electronic issues. The highest mileage truck in the fleet, what he said, the one that's being replaced now, but obviously it's the oldest truck, we can say.
And just for a little history, I think it was prior to 2020, we had 3 dump trucks. We had 2 contractors.
yeah.
And so we only had 3, and so they were on every 5 years we would buy a truck. That's just how it was for a couple of decades. So it's every 5 years you buy a new truck. And, but now we have 4 trucks, that the 5-year thing is off, and because we got 4 trucks, we squeezed in, you know, an extra one in there, basically.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so heavy now, so. But that also means that after 5 years from now, we're gonna have to, they're not spaced out properly. It's not like every,
We're gonna have to stretch
3
some of the
years.
3 that are on the preliminary column.
It should be every-
50,
yeah,
54.
I don't know, but we can't be buying a new truck every other year. Well, we have been.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Did we buy a new one last year? I
Uh,
don't think we bought one last year.
yes, 2024,
2024.
yeah,
Well, they're every 2 years apart.
Yeah.
So you figured out that's a 10-year, you're buying a new truck every 2
So
years.
we'll have a 4-year reprieve, which is.
Right.
yeah, and we don't necessarily need a reprieve, we need to space it out better.
3 years.
Yeah, I don't know, I honestly don't know what the discussions were for 2020, 22, and 24 replacements, and
Yeah,
if that came up then,
oh, it came up. But
all right.
I have opinions.
So we have 3 pieces of equipment that are new this year.
Mhm.
The mower, the loader, and the dump. The loader is the one he said could be pushed out. We
I
don't
would
need
just put, you know,
we don't need to make a decision on all of them tonight. We don't need to make a decision at all, quite frankly. If we need to get further information from Troy, we can do that.
Well, I think the low hanging fruit is the loader. I
Yeah.
mean, he said that he indicated himself that that would be something that he could
Push out.
push out.
So let's take the low hanging fruit in this sense, let's given the number of vehicles. Any objections?
no,
Nope.
Okay. We'll start there. That's line 44. For the-
Following along it.
At home. We skipped the Village Hill Road Drainage Phase 1. Well, we didn't skip it, we just talked about the equipment, the $50,000 for engineering, and that's the one related to the grant, the urban action grant.
yes,
That needs to happen and to get part of.
To get the work
project
actually
paid
done.
for.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, let's do that.
So 9:30, that's Pete's budget directly. Pete,
yes,
any objections?
no, I, fine.
Okay. And that is good. Stormwater treatment chamber. Line 50, 45,000.
We have to do that, right?
I believe so. I think we put it off to the end of the,
Yeah.
it's part of the, is that part of the MIR?
Yeah.
Or,
No, predates that.
it predates that.
Oh,
I
great.
think it's part of the permit.
It was it was a letter from B.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is, that's
But
newer, the requirement that we have this, so came even before that.
Yeah, I'm thinking 15 years ago, with the DP letter saying you need to do this.
Yeah.
We're pushing it out a year.
And we have, but assuming the transfer station's gonna stay there for the indefinite future, and Public Works seem to be willing, we hope, to
To do a lot of the work,
themselves.
yes.
Um,
So this,
and,
I heard that.
and this is an acceptable project for LoSiP funding, I believe that's one too. so-
yes, but I don't know, do we have it? We have it potentially, right? Yeah, it's captured, we would be okay, it's currently captured in LoSiP, so.
I think we got our LoSiP funding this year. I thought I saw an email of that 2 days ago. The
I did see something.
local,
$87,492 this year.
yes,
It's not a bad-
It's a good
the
number.
state gives us money to help us out.
But there's very restrictive rules.
Yeah, how you can use it. You can't use
The
it for
route
anything.
has to be at a certain pace.
No wheels.
All right, we'll leave it at LoSiP for now, and we'll check the count balances when we go.
That's good.
That's it for Public Works in the current year. Go to
What-
80,
What do you have in LoSiP?
The stormwater.
Water.
Oh, the stormwater, oh, that's in that, okay.
The Fund 02.
it's $80,000 for entryway gutters. Is that the holdover that just unspent? No, we changed, okay, got it.
Which line are you on?
Sorry, I apologize, Cypher, I'm just trying to figure out what was coming out of, potentially coming out of LoSiP. The other project coming out of LoSiP this year is the library's exterior envelope repairs, line,
57.
yeah,
60K,
66K.
66K.
Did you just say that there was 87,000 in LoSiP?
Well, yeah, it's a holdover from, we have to reconcile the fund balance sheet. Because it changed, the library project's changed since I pulled the number from the last version of the spreadsheet.
So we don't know how much is in LoSiP at this moment.
In LoSiP at this moment. We know approximately,
It's because 70,000 from the libraries.
the library's covered, so 148.5. Should be in there, right? Plus 30, plus 33.5, so 49.33. 182. So there's 182,000 in there currently. 80,000 of that is committed. For the library gutters. What happens to that?
So we're a little shy.
It stays, does it carry, or does it have to be funded? Funded too?
That's quick.
Okay.
What's a good question?
Yeah,
So
so
in the political side of that funding,
102,000.
they don't want to pile it up year after year until they figure you don't need it. So I use not to sit on that money, but use the words appropriately to expend it in other categories.
So actually, you're right, we don't, we're less than we're in there, right? We don't have the ability to cover both of them, so.
Right, we have like 100, this is like 191. With all this, instead of 182 or whatever you said we have.
Cause this would be get 33.5 back, plus 66, plus 45. So this is 180. 180 spent, sorry. From,
So it's,
This is why the spreadsheet is bad and mighty.
Lisa needed a break, her fingers are tired, she's like, I love it when they go off into this.
So we expect 13.
When we get slapped.
On that, Donna.
Ooh.
So we are negative $17,804. Overdrawn, most of by my math. Close.
Yes.
That's for this current fiscal year?
That would be, yes, we'd be overdrawing most of it by $17,000. So one of those two projects, we haven't discussed with the library what we want to do about the library project yet, but if we do bulk and most of it, we cannot. Is what it was.
In this fiscal year.
In this fiscal year,
So-
correct.
What if we, I'll try to, an idea, you can hear it if you like, the 66,000. Well, actually, no, the 80, what if we split that between 2 years?
Well,
There-
the
there-
The
The
80
80
the 80 is
is
already
already
committed.
So
That's
there,
in the
so
fire.
that's for the is that being used for the gutters or the building?
That's being used for the gutters. The building envelope is the window trim, window washing, window repair, trim, siding replacement, other new building envelopes not covered in that $80,000.
I mean, assuming it's not good practice to overspend that fund, let alone probably being illegal.
Well, could we split the
Can we
66?
split the 66 to make it balance out and,
And they got,
Like, it seems like there's stages there anyway.
yeah,
Yeah, and they haven't done the project 58, line 58. Plus, and they have the ARPA money this year that they haven't spent yet.
or we could
So,
just
so
leave it,
that's a
or
lot
just
of
leave it where
projects
it
to
is.
do this 1 year for them to manage even. I don't know if it's like.
yes, you know, you have as much information as I have. They've been talking with Carl. All I can say is when, in speaking with Steve, the director,
Yeah,
he seemed like he definitely is more on, he feels like he's on top of it.
yeah,
And
that's good.
up to that, yeah, he's.
Well, how about we leave 66 where it is in year one, assuming the budget passes July 1, they'll have another 66,000 to spend, and we'll probably, hopefully be finishing spending the 80 by then. For this current fiscal year.
If I may, it's Nick Tella, I'm on the library, if you need any insight.
Do
You have any insight on how they're spending it?
Yeah, so the notes from our last meeting that I have here is year one, they want to do gutters / heating coils, basement door and refuge area. Year two, they were gonna do the painting, window repairs and shingles. And then
66.
That's the 66
Yeah.
that move it out a year.
Okay.
yeah,
And that would make.
Thanks,
life easier. That just saves us,
No.
No, can't do that.
That's not, they corrected that.
oh,
That's,
they
that's the, yeah, that's,
Because the 80
Oh, it's
was
in our-
already approved.
the 80 was already approved
What
last
Nick is
year.
talking about is their prior plan that where year one was this current year.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we didn't do the gutters, and they ended up somehow, we looked at the walls. The ARPA money there.
Their 5-year plan started 24, 25.
Okay,
So, okay, that was the discrepancy, which what you see here is the accurate.
So they
request.
currently have approved the ARPA money, it's like 30-something thousand for the retaining walls. Then this $80,000 for the envelope, which is the gutters and the stuff. So they're already all set with that. That's it.
Correct.
And then,
So this is additional repairs for siding, windows, trim, replacement, painting. For the building envelope,
Right.
so.
Also, I don't think it's in our purview to push LoCIP money back a year for this committee. Or finance want to do. If they were, if, is the library trying to spend that 66,000 between now and the end of this fiscal year?
no, they
No.
want it next fix.
They wanted it starting July first.
So, in which case, don't we just leave everything where you have it?
We would, but it would overdraw.
It would
LoCIP, but yeah,
overdraw.
we wouldn't have the money in LoCIP to do all the projects.
So what if you, for line 57, like, I think this is what you were saying, reduce that by whatever it is, $17,000.
Bring it down to $45,000.
Say, okay, this year you get
That's what we can afford.
40,000, next year you get 20,000 for that. Or whatever, 60,
Yeah, it's 17 and change, I mean.
yeah,
I don't know how close you wanna go, live dangerously on LoCIP balance.
cause it does look like it's a job that could get split up.
These are the things that keep time happening now.
He just said 87,000 you got this year higher than we got in the last few years
Yes,
from the LoCIP money.
Yeah, I don't know.
like last year was what, 60?
That seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, that's me
Yeah.
too.
So
So would that be like windows and doors first and then trim and siding?
Whatever they want, it's whatever they want within their budget purview.
Yeah,
What number do you want to settle on, guys? We have this, call it $18,000. That make.
I 17 gets us right at the 40, it was just 45, so I'd say 40 and leave a little space. Just to make sure that we don't overspend LoCIP at all, and
40 and 26.
40 and 26, that sounds good.
We also have to see what's coming in next year for LoCIP.
Yeah, well,
Could it be 60 or could it be 80?
it could be 0.
and we put that in year 2.
Yeah, the projections carry this current year's estimate forward. As. Projection. Okay,
We finally made it to page 2.
Yeah, we got there.
yeah, we're good.
There's hardly anything on it.
There's nothing else, oh, no, there's 40K for open space, but other than that, it's super done. Oh. Reval, we gotta put in money for reval, like, not,
And line 65, floors.
So reval. And that's this, I mean, that's the appropriate, in my mind, that's the appropriate way to do it, is to spread these costs out, given what we're doing.
you
So,
How much did you say you're putting in that first year of the
40,000.
40?
Replenish open space fund, the request is $40,000 this year, and for the next 5.
Has it always been 40? I thought it used to be 25.
30,000 last year, reduced to 25, they've increased it because they're
They're looking at a property.
Yes.
yeah, and they're expending $45,000 that was reserved for that. That was
Yeah.
good.
Well, the Petix property should close any day now.
That's the one, sorry. I'll make it. I'll get that later.
The excavator, I'm fixing that too.
So the only other item on here for year 1 is the toilet room door operators for the senior center, which is making those bathrooms accessible.
Yes.
People with mobility issues. I'm not sure $10,000 is a firm number.
They have.
They did have a quote, yeah, they had a couple of quotes.
Low. What, isn't that even low?
No, they're not changing the doors, it's
It's
electrical.
just
electric operated, it's a push
Opener is.
Yeah, okay,
Between that and electrical, it's like a piece.
okay.
Which is,
The men's room and the ladies' room.
That's what they are.
they had, they were in the fund, so they're doing 10 grand.
Yep.
What's
What's your 10 grand, so?
all right. So without objection, we'll leave that one in there currently. That makes our new local spending total in year 1, without changing lines 3 and 4.
This is 82,
Road,
column L.
yeah, it's 82, it's also road 90. 2343023, 2,343,000.
2 million what?
$343,023.
That's what it was before.
That's what it was
That's what it
before.
was before, yeah.
Oh, well, that's the local spending. We changed things in the non-local spending line item.
We did.
What a waste of time. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Pete. So what was it before for non-local
So
spending?
that should be line 82. 149, right?
That was the old number.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
423,548. So we're spending less out of Fund 04, which means we might be able to do more in year 2 out of Fund 04 without hitting the budget.
So wait, what's that? new
Or
number?
we.
All right. It is what it is.
Now, Pete, where does that number for the local funds have to end up? In your eyes, in your budget, what can you afford to spend of this? Trying to get.
I've got to look at year over year. I've got to look at a number of different numbers before I can tell you. So I got to make up that number before tomorrow night, but I've got to sit down with Donna tomorrow and churn some numbers hard.
But just to
And
like
the other board.
explain it a little.
Yeah.
So the local spending this current year is $1,740,000,
No,
let's call it
yes, correct.
$1,750,000, $50,000. 1.75. Let's just say that's what it is. If we want to increase that by 10%, which is always our lofty goal, that's only $175,000 more.
Yep.
It's 10% more. So what we are looking at right now is 2.34. 2.343. That's why Pete is saying it looks really bad.
With that said, we also decreased spending last year.
Exactly.
By, what was it, 1%?
Yeah, it went down.
I think it went down 1.1 or 1.
It was a little over, it was like 1.77 or something like that. But we didn't get a 10% increase last year either, so.
Right, and there's the overall number, but then there's all these other things. So like all of these public works vehicles are coming out of one particular line in Pete's budget,
Yep.
where the transfer to the capital projects fund is a different line item. So that's
Okay, so like taking that 39,000 out for the loader doesn't affect that total.
No, that affects line item 311.
That should affect the line 2.
Yeah, it should affect that
343.
2.243, yeah.
And it didn't.
It didn't in the number I gave you, hold on. Because I need to leave it from it was because I just crossed it off. so
Because
that
we
I
went
can
to,
find
that should come off with year 1 and on year up, year 2, and then
Yeah.
just put up year
Right.
3.
My apologies,
But then we also kind of made that year 1 figure for the Willington Hill parking lot. 100K instead of 65, so do they offset?
No, we kept it at
No, we kept
65.
Oh,
it
that's
65 because you need 100.
Yeah, my apologies, it's
Okay, gotcha.
$2,304,201. Please don't set that in stone. Because, like I said, this is a very manual process, moving things from one fund to the other in the way this is set up. I'm hoping we can streamline that in future years. Thank you for that catch.
That came, that's there.
So we're still at about 500 and something thousand more than last year, doing the math in my head, which
But
is.
we haven't looked at next year yet, and the year after that.
Yeah, no, I just, I know we bump heads on this all the time, but this year it's 500 more than last year.
Yes,
Okay.
this year, yeah, it's in that neighborhood.
Well, 500 more than last year is much better than the first number I was looking at, it was 1.2. So I don't know where we're gonna come up with 500. So,
Well, the age old sacrificial goat in this I believe, is the transfer to the capital reserve fund.
Yeah,
And in some
No,
years,
that's the play.
Yeah.
in some years, that has been sacrificed to death
like last year.
Last year.
to keep the tax rate down and. And you're right, in the long term, is that a good way to operate? No, not, but if the budget needs to pass. And it's gonna be on the backs of CIP, among all your other line items.
It's gonna be on the
No.
tax, my public works.
I don't think we can do that 2 years in a row though.
Yeah,
Well, we can zero it out, but
but no, we
Yeah,
can't
that's
zero it out, but we
nothing.
also, like,
we put a big dent in.
I don't think, I personally do not, we have to grow. The reserve fund and we have to increase spending every year or we're going.
But if we're gonna cut, are we gonna cut from transfer or are we gonna cut from operating? That's, I mean.
Or we. Make the case to the voters, show them this is what the cap, you know, this is, that's my only argument. I
No,
understand you're gonna have to do with what you gotta do with the budget, but. The job of this committee is to figure out how we fund. All of these projects, the ones we feel are valid.
Yep.
Reasonably, and that is a disgusting conversation with taxpayers, I get that, But without any planning, without showing the information or giving them the information to make that decision. Which is the other reason why I say it's really important to divorce that from your budget percentage, we have to find a way to. Reorient the discussion so that. The level of need and capital planning isn't just a. Oh my God, my budget number is this, you know, because that's what the reaction is, and people need to understand the level of need here, and we need to figure out a way. Collectively as a community to. Make that happen and to plan for it and to understand that.
Pete, in terms of your presentation, can you, and maybe you do it already, split off. Or clearly define your operational line items
As opposed to my CIP line item?
and CIP separately with the grand total at the
Yeah,
bottom.
that's the way it,
Yeah,
the
it's a very
presentation's
small
already
line in
written.
the presentation, but yeah, is there a way of? Prepare that for me?
She does prepare for me, she's already prepared me one that I will be using with newer numbers in it, and let me. God, I'm losing paperwork faster than I can find it.
Page one, it's in the top right, summary, it's a little line.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's split out.
So both.
It is, but that-
You know, in presentation to the Board of Finance. Is one part of that, although they're pretty good at reading up these kind of where they are. But ultimately, whoever in the town is gonna review this prior to voting. You know,
Can see it as well.
that's the.
and to see if it's helpful, I mean, they might be just looking at the bottom line and don't care where it's coming from.
But it's also, I mean, it's also a model of his budget too, it's, you know, like he has. An operational budget, he needs to be cognizant of, and he needs to be responsive to the taxpayer, but. So he shouldn't, like, that budgetary need shouldn't be overshadowed by the fact that. There's an increase in capital spending, project need. So it's really just about how we advance the conversation, if wherever we wind up on this. I think those are, it may not happen this year, but I think those are things we want to try to start discussing in more detail here and. I don't know. With Board of Finance, et cetera. Between now and next year. Budget season.
Glasses, okay.
We've gone through, this is the first pass at year one. Where do you guys feel about,
No, I can just take them out of cheese.
where do you guys feel about advancing year two or waiting till next week?
I think we can wait till next week because we've been here for 2 hours.
Pete, is there anything else you need from us tonight?
No, I don't think so. That's why at the beginning of this, I said we need to concentrate on having something for me to present for year one. Yeah,
So as a part of your budget, understanding,
yeah,
we'll still have to.
So
at some point, so-
you're gonna go in with 800 in the 9.3 and 1,000,000 in 9.4.
I'm gonna go in with,
I'm sorry.
as a start. And it's what I'm gonna let, you know.
Well, you let them know we're still deliberating.
Or, yeah, the board of, let them know that we're still deliberating, and they know that because you're not for another 2 weeks and, I, Board of Finance kind of controls some money in this town.
I mean, next year I do.
I try to get stuff done, they try to control the money, and it works out.
Pete, do
You've
you
been on
have
both
what you
sides,
need?
yeah.
Do you have what you need for your budgetary presentation?
I believe I do, yes.
Okay, so
I-
will take the time and we'll get an updated.
Yes,
spreadsheet with
and-
line items.
yes.
Not.
And then-
Early first thing in the morning.
No,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, Donna and I will work together, and so that when the other selectmen come in at 11, we can,
I just wanna maybe, attach on to what you were talking about, Jim. I think on the off budget, we're going to end up talking about the whole plan this budget season, but I think as an exercise in moving us forward, I think in the off budget season, we should have some very specific goals as far as what we talk about and what we want to achieve, because I think you're right, a capital plan needs to make sense. It needs to fit, it needs to all work, flow, whatever the word is you want to use. And planning very specifically for these big projects is really important. And you figured out a way to help us kind of understand how to maybe put money aside to pay for those things, and how we get that information disseminated, or how we can make that an actionable thing, I think is a really important discussion, but I'm not sure that we're gonna be able to have it this budget season.
Absolutely.
So I just wanna make sure that, like, I think it's an important one to have, I just don't know that we're gonna be able to fit it in this year.
No, we're not. It's the reality of it. Being under the gun, the only point, I think the only consideration is just understanding. How we evaluate the total spending of the transfer this year. That's the only, what the thought process could be going forward.
But I do think it's important that we keep it on the front burner. So that we can maybe have a more reasonable conversation about it next budget season.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts on CIP plan for tonight before we move on? Going once, going twice. New business, I have none. Kristen, did you have any?
There we go.
So moving on, present to speak, there is nobody in the room, so if you're online and would like to speak, please raise your hand and identify yourself. I see Nick. You're up.
Nick Tella, Myrtle, Wellington.
All right.
So one of the most concerning comments I heard this whole meeting was Peter Tanaka saying basically he just wants to raise the expenses in town until he can get to 51%. I find that extremely troubling for him to say something like that. Looking at other towns, continuously looked at CIPs in other towns, New Hartford, 37 square miles were 30, I think it was 33 and change, similar populations. Their CIP is running, actually went down from 601,000, basically a little under 600,000. Killingworth, similar size and population. They were up to 2.5 million, which they went up about 24%. Looking at last year's CIP bottom line number, we went from 2.8 million to 5.3, according to our spreadsheet online, which was a 46.5% increase. That's based off of what's on the Board of Finance final approved budget. So,
I don't believe that number's correct, Nick.
No.
and according to the town documents online, it is.
Well, there's a couple, there's the local spending number, then there's the the
The total number for CIP.
Yeah, but that's not all local spending, Nick. Some of that is bond spending, some of that is reimbursement spending.
No,
Yeah,
I
so-
understand that. I understand that. And it's still at 5.3 million out of hand, so.
Thank you, Nick. Anybody else? Peter? Peter, you're muted. Peter, you're still muted. I'm sorry. Oh, wrong person.
Sorry.
Oh, you lowered his sound.
Okay, maybe.
All right, Mike, we'll move on to you, Peter. If you can get that working, let us know. Mike McHugh?
Hi, Mike McCoo, Clover Springs Drive.
I'm gonna have this whole time.
What's that?
You made it this whole time. Congratulations.
Um, I was attending this meeting with particular interest because I know from past years on CIP that this is a difficult meeting when you really have to start grinding the numbers. And I feel like the group did good work tonight. And I have many of the same concerns voiced across members of the board, including how do we find a way to properly maintain our facilities and increase, at least not lose value of facilities by doing enough capital spending, and also trying to reverse a trend which is common across many towns and many organizations of turning deferred maintenance into big capital projects because you eventually have no choice. So I just want to say thanks to the board, and I think off budget season conversations about the longer term planning beyond the 5 years, the concepts of how do we save for capital, and all this stuff I think is really critical because let's face it, our world is too complicated, too expensive to do 5 year plans only. And the things we need in this town and even some of the things we reasonably would want have gotten hideously expensive. Um, but I will say that I think the budget is still conservative. I certainly don't want my taxes to go up. I have a lot of things I pay taxes on between property and vehicles, and I make sure to pay them every year, despite the fact it hurts because um, that's my contribution, that's my responsibility to the community, and I don't want it to go up, but I also want us to continue to maintain our way of life and our facilities and get beyond this struggle of everything breaking down and then us having to fix it once it's broken. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right, Peter, I'm gonna go back to you because you had your hand raised.
I think
Again.
I think I'm unmuted, am I?
Yep, we got
Yeah.
that.
Oh, great. Peter Latinchich, 97 Trask Road. You were in the latter portion of your discussion talking about how this would be more understandable to the townspeople. And myself as a resident, I'm very confused by your approach to CIP. I think most people in town recognize that the town is facing two major capital projects, the school buildings and the fire facilities. One would think, recognizing that and knowing we're going to probably have to bond those large projects, that we would want to have some sort of scaling back of the rest of CIP in preparation for that. Yet you seem to be going in the opposite direction, as if we can fund everything you're discussing tonight and then fund these substantial or major projects as well. And that just doesn't seem feasible to me and a lot of other townspeople that are watching this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Ralph.
Good evening, everybody. Ralph Tullis here, Village Hill Road. All I wanted to do was comment on what Mike McCoo had mentioned earlier about the ESFBC. I think even though he was speaking as a fire department representative, he captured the committee's dilemma with respect to trying to plan for financial demands into the future. Hopefully, with our consultant on board now and a quick response from our departments on the data needed for him to analyze our situation, we can at least come to a station location confirmation reasonably quick, probably in the next 2 or 3 months. Certainly not as fast as everyone would like it to occur, but I think that's reasonable. And I'm speaking as vice chairman of the committee, and I don't believe that I'm speaking out of turn with respect to the sentiments of the committee as a whole. Certainly, urgency is very apparent to everyone, and we're hoping to push things along as quickly as possible. I just wanted to add that for your consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Ralph. Peter, did you raise your hand again?
No, he didn't take it down.
Or did you not take it down?
He didn't take it down.
All right. That's it, everybody.
Are you looking for a motion to
Motion to
adjourn?
adjourn, Pete?
Move to adjourn.
Second. Peter,
You're my man.
Peter. Hey,
Oh, sorry.
One and one, Peter one and Peter
Peter
two.
one and Peter two.
we're gonna make you guys shirts now.
Thing one,
Peter one and
Meeting
Peter two.
adjourned, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, yeah, thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't wanna see repeat.
okay.
Be prepared, your two looks gross, guys.